So I've been using ChatGPT a lot lately, and while it's great that you can type in your questions and get a response, it just got me thinking, what if you could upload a document? I mean, just think about it. It would completely, change things, because instead of asking very generic questions, you could now ask very specific questions related to that particular document or that particular data set that you just uploaded. So that's the idea with today's video. We're going to be feeding ChatGPT with some financial data. The idea is that I find an Excel spreadsheet that has some monthly expenses, and we're going to be building a Python program that is able to upload the document to ChatGPT, and we'll see what ChatGPT has to say about it. Is it able to derive insights? Is it able to tell us how to reduce our expenses and all that stuff? So I found this really nice data set on Kaggle. This is just one person who's been tracking his finances for months. And this is basically what the data set looks like. We have 4 months, right, from 2021 November till 2022 March. We have a category, couple of categories, we have some notes, and then we have the amount in Indian rupees, and it can either be an expense or it can be an income. For this video, we're only going to be concerned with the expense. So the next thing, obviously, that we need is the OpenAI API to access ChatGPT. And you can sign up, just on their website. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is something really interesting. It's called LangChain. It's this Python library that allows us to integrate large language models into our Python applications. And we're going to be using this. And the idea with LangChain is that, so we have something called agents in LangChain. So an agent is basically an entity that takes actions on your behalf. So it's an entity that's able to, to basically make some decisions, to make like a plan, and then also execute on that plan. And you can have all sorts of agents. So in our case, we're going to be having a Python agent that's responsible for reading the CSV file, and it's also responsible for generating Python code. But not only that, it's also able to execute the generated Python code. So that's the idea with agents, and it's going to become a lot clearer once we look at the code. So we have a couple of import statements here. I've already installed the OpenAI and the LangChain Python packages. You can install them using pip. I've also just imported the OpenAI API key into Python. You'll get this from the OpenAI page once you have signed up. The next thing we do is we create a CSV agent, and there's like a whole page here on agents. I have a lot of agents. We'll be using the CSV agent since we need to read a CSV and also handle the CSV. Now you'll see here that it actually calls the pandas data frame agent, which in turn calls the Python agent. So there's just like chain of agents that get called. There are a lot of nice examples here, and just one important thing. When I first ran this code, I just copied this code here, and turns out that the default model that this uses is the DaVinci model, which is like 10 times more expensive than GPT 3.5. So make sure that you use the code down here if you're following along. It uses, and you specify here that the model it uses is the GPT 3.5 model. The next thing is the temperature. We set that to 0. So the temperature is like a hyperparameter that you can use to specify the creativity of the response that you get. A temperature of 0 means that it's more factual and more accurate, whereas temperature of 1 means that it's more creative. Since we're dealing, with data, we want it to be as low as possible. One last thing, I actually also filtered the data a bit. So when I first ran this code, on the recent data set, the model ran into some problems. So basically, I wanted it to do like calculations on a month-by-month basis, but it wasn't really able to do that properly. Like, it would give the wrong answer. So I just filtered the data so that we only consider December 2021. All right, this is the fun part. We get to now ask a ton of questions, and we can ask it whatever we want from the data set. So I'll just start with a very simple, so we say agent.run, and then here we give basically the prompt or the question we wanted to answer. So we can just say, can you describe the data set, like that, and then we can run this, and you'll see that it's now running the df.describe function from Python, and that function returns this data here. So this blue part is the output of the df.describe function, but the green part is actually ChatGPT trying to understand the result of the df.describe function and explain that to us. So it's quite interesting that it's able to do this, to be giving us the count of the number of rows of every column, and also the mean and the standard deviations. And all of this, the amount, for example, we're able to see that the mean, amount of money that the person has spent in December 2021 is 309 rupees. And we also have the standard deviation. We have, the maximum value the person has spent, as well as the minimum value that the person has spent. So what we can also ask is something like, so we can say agent.run, and then we say, just to have some fun, can you sum up the expenses for me, like that. So we run this. I think this was phrased a bit poorly. So can you sum up the expenses for each category? Yeah, so for each category, can you sum up the expenses for me? Let's rerun this. So you'll notice that it's doing like a group by function in pandas, and then it's getting this very nice sort of table of expenses. Now, one thing to note here is that I said expenses, and allowance is actually, so if we go back to the data set, you'll notice that allowance is, okay, this is not done very nice. Yeah, but allowance is basically an income, right? That's the money that the person is getting. So it shouldn't actually be part of this. But in any case, still pretty cool. All right, so now we're getting to like the most interesting parts. So I took the previous prompt and I just added an extra sentence to it. So once it has summed up the expenses, can you suggest some ways to reduce expenses and increase savings? Let's run this and see what ChatGPT has to say about it. Okay, that took like 16 seconds to run. Cut unnecessary expenses. Okay, this is a bit generic, I would say. This is also generic. Reduce dining out. Eating out can be a significant expense. Working at home more often. Okay, save on transportation. I can kind of see what it's getting at. So to force the model to look specifically at the data, I just rephrased the prompt a bit so that we get something that's more, that's closer to the data and like less generic. So what specific expenses would you suggest I'll take a closer look at in order to reduce costs and increase savings? Let's run this and see what ChatGPT has to say about it. All right, so this is looks a bit shorter, I guess, the answer. So now it's explaining like how you can do it. So the categories or the expenses. Okay, it's a bit of a weird, this will give you a list of the categories that has expenses. Okay, so it's like showing what, okay, so this is like where the prompt engineering, is important, I guess. Can you list specific expenses I should take a closer look at in order to reduce costs and increase things? Let's rerun this. This is a bit weird that it's not executing the Python code.
3 hours later.
So after a lot of trial and error, I figured out what made it actually execute the Python code that it was suggesting. So I just gave it the output format for its response. So your response should have the following format: expense 1, expense 2, expense 3, and this tells it to actually use some calculations to reach the expenses. And so you'll see here that it does like some pandas data frame stuff. It does a group by where it takes the sum of the amount for each category, and then it looks at the three largest expenses, and then does like a to list on that, and then it tells us that it's food, household, and apparel that are the three largest expenses that I should look at in order to reduce my costs and increase savings. And the food, household, and apparel, I also did like some manual data analysis, and it's actually the three largest expenses. So that was pretty. It's actually pretty cool. So let me know what you thought about the video, what you think about ChatGPT. Do you think it's going to take over the world? Is it just hype, or does it actually have some utility to it? And let me know if you want more of these types of videos where I delve into new topics and do like a sort of like a project-based video, or whether you would like more tutorial style videos.